I don't know if you're into cool things or not. I don't know if you guys, I don't know if you guys like cool. All right, here we go. Here we go. Here we go. So let me show you this. This right here is a honeypot. All right, I'm going to make this font a little bit bigger. I'm going to go appearance. We're going to change that up. So this is probably for me, I think that this is one of the coolest things um, I have seen in the ways of honeypots in a really long time. So let me go through this honeypot. So this is an SSH honeypot. And you can run all of these different commands. Like you can see, I did ls. I can do less notes like so. Oh, that didn't work. I got to do less notes.txt like so. And you notice that there's a little bit of a lag, but that's cool. We've got all of these, discuss requirements, gathering, development, testing, launch. We got the project manager as Alex. If I go back to my directory, I can cd to the top level directory, type ls. I can gain access to a bunch of different VM lins files. I can cd into mount. And I want you to know, I have no idea what's going to happen with this. I have none at all. If I cd into, let's go to, let's see if I can become root. If I become root, let's see what happens. I need to, oh, I got to put in the password. It's not going to let me do it. That's okay. I don't know what's going to happen with any of this because everything is being dynamically generated by AI. All right. Everything. So this is a honeypot that was created. The name of it is called Beelzebub right here. This is the honeypot. And the way it works is it takes every single request that you put to it and it feeds it into OpenAI ChatGPT. And it has some very specific restraints around what it is allowed to give back. Let's see if I can find any of the configs here. So this is me running it. I think it's go main here. Oh, I didn't want that. Let's go main. What? I thought there was main go. And what it does is it connects into ChatGPT and it gives it a whole bunch of prompts. And the prompts are prompts like, you have received the following command. I want you to give me a response. I do not want you to explain it. I do not want you to give any of your output. I just want you to give me the raw output of what you would do. All of these different things. Sorry, I'll do that in a second. But it basically feeds your command to ChatGPT, and then ChatGPT literally hallucinates a response back to any of the questions that you give it. So if I do ifconfig, like so, it's now asking what it should expect for a response for ifconfig. And ChatGPT ponders this question and it comes back with, here's an answer for ifconfig. So it is really, really super cool. And I have been working on the outline of a lab using it. So these are all of the wireframe instructions for this on how to get it up and running. So we're going to add in a new lab into this class called Beelzebub. And we have another one that we're going to be using called Cowrie a little bit later, which is neat, but it's very much a static SSH honeypot. And then I'm planning on adding in another lab that's a port spoof update called Go Spoof that's written in Golang, and it works as well. So there's a bunch of new things that I'm working on, and we're going to go ahead and get those up and running. If you want to jump to the front of the queue and you want to try to get Beelzebub up and running on your Kali VM, I just shared the instructions on how to do that. We're going to try to get those instructions cleaned up and get them added in. And I'm really super excited about this because There's been people that have been asking, can you use artificial intelligence to do cyber deception? And the answer is yes. And this actually solves a lot of problems for us in the cyber deception space, because a lot of the canned responses you get out of artificial intelligence, they are the same responses every single time. So it becomes very, very kind of predictable, and it becomes something that someone can predict and accurately fingerprint a honeypot system. And I'll get to that here in just a little bit. But what we want to do is we want to jump into the AC Hunter lab that we closed out yesterday as well. So isn't it expensive? I don't know. I can go into billing. I'm not going to give you guys my API keys. Like if you look at the instructions start by going and getting your billing and getting your API keys. And when you're working in open AI, you can actually put in a spend limit on your API keys. Like what's the total amount maximum that you're going to spend per month? What is the total amount that it can add back in per time? So you can actually put some restrictions around it. But I think it does a really, really super cool kind of step in showing how it actually works. So right now it is literally like, these are the raw commands. There's hardly any explanations. There's no screenshots. I guarantee you that there is a ton of typos in this because it's written by me. But all that being said, I'm excited about this because it's kind of a new lab in this class. So sit tight. I'll reshare it up right here. If you guys want to go ahead and go into resources, you all can play with it. By the way, if you go into resources, the recording from yesterday is now in there. So once again, super excited about that, but we're going to continue what we did yesterday. We're going to talk about AC Hunter, which is another tool that I am super excited about as well. So I'm going to log in, put in the training, and I'm going to give it the password. What is this one? Got beacons is the one. All right. And it's going to ask you a couple of questions. The first thing it asks is in the WinLab agent data set, it says, what is like the frequency of connections for the backdoor? So you can see that this particular backdoor, we are 98% certain that this is a non-human beaconing executable on this computer. And the reason why this is really important is because I don't want to sound weird, but there are no false positives with this tool. Now, that doesn't mean it's always malware because that's snake oil. But if it says that something is non-human beaconing, it is in fact non-human beaconing, right? And if we look at this, you can tell that we have this really super flat histogram down at the bottom where the number of connections per hour is pretty close to the exact same every single time, right? Right? And if we look at the main mode of the connections, we have 3,729 connections at 15-second intervals. It's kind of insane, right? Now, if you notice, it's not perfect. You can see that we have connection intervals that drift off to the left. This particular backdoor was created by Joff Thayer. And Joff Thayer was trying to add in some randomness and some things that would mess with the specific one of the algorithms that we use called k-means clustering. You can actually see this. Go k-means clustering, like so. And it is basically an algorithm that is identifying patterns and clusters of consistencies within data sets, right? That's what it does. This is a machine learning algorithm that you can use, and that's why we call it, artificial intelligence, right? But it does that type of frequency analysis detection, and you can see here that it's able to identify that it's got multiple attributes that are not just k-means clustering, right? We have the mode as a very, very strong mode, and we have the histogram is incredibly flat, whether or not it's hourly or we do it by 30 minutes. The other thing is, if you click on the 2, it shows you the data size, and we have 7,168 connections with no bytes. Why is this important? Why do we care about this? This is hotness. All right, so imagine that you find a beacon. Imagine that you find malware on a computer system, right? And what are some of the questions that management would ask you, right? If there's malware on a computer, it's like, crap, we've got malware on the system. What are people going to ask about? How far is it spread? Great. One of the things you can do with this, hold on. Just give me a second here. Kyle brought up a great point. Has this been installed on any other computers? You can go to the IP address that it connects to, go to deep dive, and it'll tell you how many systems in our network are actually communicating to that C2 channel. And this, you can see that we have connections from this IP address, this IP address, this IP address, and this IP address. I can answer that question very, very quickly. Excellent, excellent, excellent. And the next thing is what you have here is all of the data is 0-byte payload. This looks like Darktrace, but we use Darktrace at my last job. Well, two things about that. First, this one actually works. Second thing about Darktrace, this product for the commercial license is cheaper than the sales tax for Darktrace by a lot. All right. So yeah, we had a customer, our largest customer, that's running at like 100 gigabits per second. They tested us and like a bunch of other of the like these types of tools, and they said that we were the only one that did what we said that we do. So that was kind of cool. I like that one. That was fun. All right. So no, all of the payloads are 0 bytes. All the payloads are 0 bytes. Every single one of them. So if management ever asks you the question, hey, is there any data that's been exfilled? Did they take anything from our system? You can look at this and you can answer that question. No, we got compromised. We got these 4 systems that have compromised, but none of the packets that are going to the command and control server have any data in them. This is very common where the malware is like a drive-by download exploit where they get in, they have this, like you have compromises, and then it just sits. Because the attackers haven't activated the back door. It's just basically the back door got in, and then it's basically connecting out on that as well. So very, very super cool with that one. All right, what is the next one? Let's go to the dashboard. I think the next one was GCAT. Ooh, GCAT. And this one is asking specifically about fully qualified domain names. So if we're looking at the IP address that is compromised, the 1055.100.111, we see that it has an 87% certainty that this is non-human, or it's just automated beaconing activity. But it's weird because it's going to Google, right? And I'm going to talk more about this, but this is a backdoor that we created in a number of years ago. I want to say we created in 2017. I don't know. It was a long time ago when we first created this. And this particular backdoor, it's asking, what is the historic fully qualified domain name? And you can see that all of the traffic is going to gmail.smtp. If we go to Beacon's fully qualified domain name, it breaks it down even more. And I got my thing in dark mode, which really messes with colors, but it is all Gmail SMTP, and it is legit Gmail SMTP traffic. Well, let me clarify that. It is compliant with Gmail, but it's actually malicious. What exactly is it doing? Well, the name of this backdoor is GCAT. And this particular backdoor, once you run it, all of the command and control is via Google Mail. So it checks Google Mail, sees if there's any emails for itself. And if there's no emails or there's no commands, it just checks back in. What is the mode on this one? 11 seconds later. And then if there is a command, it executes the command and then emails itself the results. So the entire C2 is all done over legit Gmail services. Now, we created this. My theory was that traditional firewalls, IDS, IPS systems were completely ignoring all traffic going to Google. And it turns out we were right. They were totally ignoring literally everything that was going to Google, like all of it. And the issue with it is it actually kind of makes sense whenever you think about it. So someone was asking, what was the data size of the connections? There were 7,449 connections with 1,441 byte payloads. Did they activate the backdoor? Turns out we have one connection here way off that is much larger. So there was some data that was exfiltrated. The plot thickens on that as well. The question was, if IP addresses changes, will active countermeasure detect it? Yes. We have the beacons by fully qualified domain name for that. So if you have a backdoor that's using flux, double fast flux, where the domain is staying the same, but the IP address is rotating, it still picks it up as a beacon. Very good question. Very good question. Now about this backdoor. So we created this backdoor, and like I said, it makes sense whenever you think about it. Let's go to XKCD tar. So I want you to imagine that you're actually intercepting and analyzing all traffic that goes to Google. You're looking at everything that's going to Gmail. You're looking at everything that's going to just straight Google searches. And then something like this happens. Rob, you use Unix. Come quick. To disarm the bomb, simply enter a valid tar command on your first try. No Googling. You have 10 seconds. Rob, I am so sorry. How many of you use Google constantly to figure out how to run a command or analyze a log or analyze the output of a command? If we were analyzing, tracking every single one of the connections people were going to Google, we would run into a situation, or even ChatGPT, we would run into a situation where we were literally tripping IDS, IPS alerts constantly because it would look like data exfiltration. Then, how many of you have privacy rules? Like, do you want to have full visibility into every user's personal email account? Like doing TLS SSL interception on everything? No. So everyone ignores it. Further, it's speed, right? The other problem is speed. If you ignore everything that goes to Google, if you ignore all private email, that is a tremendous amount of traffic that's coming and going to the internet that your IDS, IPS firewall doesn't have to analyze. So we created this backdoor as a proof of concept. And shortly after we released this backdoor, the Ukrainian power grid went down. Now, this is before the active shooting war that we're in right now, or that Ukraine's in right now with Russia. The Ukraine power grid went down. Turns out Russia used this exact same backdoor that we created as a proof of concept to gain access and establish command and control in that situation. So when we're coming to this situation where we're talking about, what are like nation state level adversaries doing? They're doing stuff like this. We know it because they're literally stealing the techniques that we come up with. Because of this, we've actually changed out some of our approaches. So we have a bunch of we call them 0 days. We've shared them with Microsoft, and Microsoft has absolutely told us, nope, we don't consider this to be a 0 day. We don't consider this to be a problem. We consider this issue closed. And we consider them dangerous enough to not release publicly. So this happens a lot. There's a number of forever days that exist from a number of different vendors that refuse to do anything about it. All right, last one. Here we go, AC Hunter. The next one is the DNS Cat 2 JA3 strobe agent. We'll confirm that one. And this gets into something called DNS backdoors. So you can see that our number one connection is R-1X. There we go. We have this guy right here. Now let's talk a little bit about what a fully qualified domain name is, right? If we have a domain, it's something like Google. That's it, just a domain. But think about all the services that Google has. Just a domain, it's not fully qualified. www.google is a fully qualified domain name. It's a domain that goes to a host that does a specific thing. If we talk about maps.google.com, same thing. It's fully qualified. It takes you to the map service. If we talk about mail.google.com, same thing. It takes us to this as well. So we have that capability for us to be able to look at these domains. And when we see a domain like r-1x.com that has 62,468 fully qualified domain names, that ain't normal. I can only think of one weird edge case that is able to actually detect and where that's legit. It's Kimry, and they're a Welsh organization. And you can submit DNS.kimry.com, and it'll check that hash and then give you in the DNS response whether or not it's known malware. That's it. That's the only one I've ever came across that does that. So when we're looking at this, you don't ever see an organization that has 62,468 domains, right? But if we look at it, it's all being queried by the exact same host. Now, there's a potentially legit situation where that might happen. Why would you have a scenario where one host is doing all the lookups in a domain? Why would we see that? Why would we see one host doing every lookup for everything that's going out on the internet? Nope, it's not a proxy. Good guess, though. Recursive, what does recursion in an Active Directory environment? What does recursion for DNS lookups? In an Active Directory environment, the one system that does recursion for all of the internal hosts most of the time is the domain controller. So it's possible that this system is a domain controller. If that's the case, you would see one host making all the queries, but there would be multiple systems making direct connections to that IP address. And in this situation, same system that's making the queries is making the connections. So that is a DNS backdoor. There you go. Now, when we're looking at all of this stuff, how long do you think it would take you to try to do this by hand, right? I think that that's really kind of what we're trying to get at. Like, we're trying to make network threat hunting much, much, much more efficient for people to be able to do this stuff. So that's really, really important. So if you want to play with this, there is a community edition. Someone will throw it up in the chat here in just a second. But you can run it at home. In fact, we have an entire lab to set up AC Hunter Community Edition at home. Let me go back to Intro Labs. Okay. I hate that. Would you like to code 50% faster with GitHub Pilot? No, I do not want to code faster. I actually like to know what my code does. We have a lab, AC Hunter Community Edition, where I walk through step-by-step how to set up AC Hunter Community Edition right here and get it running at home. And you can use something called BetterCap that does ARP cache poisoning to reroute all the traffic in your network at home to reroute it through your AC Hunter Community Edition system so that you can do beaconing analysis. Now, we had a couple of questions. The first question I thought was a really solid question. It was like, what about DNS over HTTPS? Yes, you may not see DNS name resolution, but AC Hunter still has the ability to identify the beaconing traffic in those particular situations on that as well. All right, so there you go. So simple. You can play with it some more. You can do a number of different cool things. So check it out. All right, now let's get back to the slides. All right, we already did this. And let's talk a little bit about poison and venom, right? Once again, we're not talking about the band Poison. You should never let them into your house, never once. Bret Michaels, he's just gonna mess up your holidays. You know that's, you know what's underneath that do-rag that he wears? More pain. All right. Actually, to be honest, I think Bret Michaels seems kind of fun. I don't know. Got a minor remark for AH, specifically deep dive tab when hovering over large domain names and IPs, layers over each, partially obfuscating the IP address slightly on the edge. Yeah, this doesn't really matter all that much because this entire interface is going away. We are we're going into QA/QC this week. We've had a beta release of AC Hunter 7. It's been out to a number of customers for a while now. And we are going to be releasing 7.1 here in a little bit. So the whole interface is completely different. How does AC Hunter understand DNS over HTTPS? I thought I mentioned that. So you'll see the requests, but you won't be able to decode the requests, but you will still be able to see the beaconing traffic. That's the point. I don't even really care about what the payload is for a lot of things. I just want to see the behavioral characteristics of those backdoors. I hope that answers the question. If you want more, by the way, Chris Brenton does very regular workshops and full classes with packet decoding and advanced packet decoding. So if you want to look at that, we'll get some links up for you all. We have full pay what you can classes from Active Countermeasures where you can learn network threat hunting far faster or far more efficient. Oh God. I got like heartburn right now. I keep burping. But you can get it much better from Chris Brenton. Chris Brenton is actually the person I learned from as well. So check it out. How does incognito protect through Google where your routes are going through a double proxy? It doesn't matter. It's still beaconing. Once again, I'm not looking at the payload. I don't care what the payload is. It can be encrypted. It can go through 9 proxies. I just don't give a rip. But if I have a system on the inside of the environment that is beaconing out at regular intervals, that's where I start doing the investigation. That's where I start diving into it, right? So yeah, I do not care as long as I'm seeing that beaconing traffic going outbound. That's where I'm going to start doing my investigations. Another really weird thing. Let me see if I have. Let me see. This is a strange. Did I mistype this? A really super strange world that's something I discovered is a ton of the ASNs. So if we're looking at like, I just don't know why I can't find it. I got ASN ranking. I might have the instructions on how to do this. I'll look this up in a little bit whenever we get in the next lab. But when you look at the ASNs are like zip codes of like responsibility. So think of zip codes in the United States. If I'm sending a letter to somebody, right, and I kick this out from one zip code to another, it's going to go to a different post office, and all the post offices are going to route it accordingly. ASNs are like zip codes. So if you go to an IP address out on the internet, it's going to route it to that appropriate zip code. Now, there are good neighborhoods and bad neighborhoods on the open internet. And if you take the top 20 evil ASNs on the internet, take the top 20, something like 98% of the bad IP addresses are in those 20 ASNs. It's crazy, right? So if you're looking at like, trying to find evil on a network, if you have any of your systems that are connecting out to those ASNs, you are going to detect probably some malware. And they're in weird places. Like DigitalOcean is number one, which is weird because there's legit services in DigitalOcean, but there's a bunch of compromised systems in DigitalOcean. And then you have a bunch of the usual suspects. You have Russian ASNs, ton of Chinese ASNs, and then it just drops off to like next to nothing very quickly. So I'll find that and walk that through. Maybe we should do an ASN lab in the intro to security class on that as well. All right, so we'll come back to that. All right, so venom and poison. If I find my cursor, there we go. All right, poison is something that needs to be interacted with, right? Like you can have like a poisonous frog. The poisonous frog isn't jumping up and like biting you on the neck. It just doesn't work that way. A lot of people call like octopuses poisonous, right? Because an octopus is going to leave you alone. It's not going to hunt you down and poison you as a human. It's just going to leave you alone unless you step on it. Down in Costa Rica, there was a video of this lady that found this beautiful baby, like octopus, and it's sitting there and it's playing with it in the water. And that little itty bitty baby octopus had enough venom to kill, or enough poison, I should say, to kill something like 12 elephants. It's one of the most poisonous things on the face of the planet. But it must have enjoyed it because it didn't kill that lady. Yeah, it was a blue-ringed octopus. So that's crazy, right? It's poisonous. It's going to leave you alone. It's not going to hunt you down and kill you. It's just going to chill until you step on it. And then bad things, right? Something is different when it's venomous, though. When it's venomous, it's injected. Like no one ever says like we're going to have a poisonous like scorpion. It's venomous. It's going to hunt you down and strike you. Venomous snake. It's going to attack you. A venomous bunny rabbit, right? It's fierce beastie, right? That you need the sacred hand grenade of Saint Antioch to be able to take it out. But it's something that is actively trying to attack you. And in active defense, we're creating poison. We're creating things where it's like, here, drink this and you'll experience everything that she experienced, right? Which was a stupid movie. It's a long story. But at any rate, you want to be something that the attacker has to do something, interact with, pull it back, then bad things happen to that attacker. And this will help you in court, right? If it's like an example would be, I talked about a bear trap, right? If you have a bear trap in your living room to catch an attacker in your house, that's illegal. You cannot do that. If you have a bear trap that's properly stored in your house and they take the bear trap and then they set it off in their house, well, that's them just being dumb. And there have been legal cases where people have stolen dangerous things, bad things happen to those people, and they literally tried to sue them, right? Chad is talking about Chada is saying when you fake passwords.xls, the spreadsheet contains a logic bomb and a macro, which is what we're going to talk about a little bit later. Absolutely. You're doing all of these different things. A hippopotamus isn't venomous. A hippopotamus is just straight up evil. I think that they're the most dangerous animal in the world. I think more people die from hippopotamuses than like you think it's sharks, not even close. A hippopotamus just has bad attitudes. Except that one. That one's adorable. All right. So we're doing this. We're not going to attack. We're not going to attack. So what we want to do is we want to start with a basic framework of some poison, some very, very basic things that will mess with an attacker's day. Because once again, making attackers cry is what this class is all about. And when attackers cry, collect their tears because it makes the best wine. All right, we're going to talk about some really, really basic things that I've seen over the year that I think are just really exciting out there. Let's start with the basics. Mr. Clippy, show us the way. So a long time ago, there was this add-on you could have for PHP IDS. PHP IDS is exactly what it says on the can. It's an intrusion detection system for PHP servers. So PHP is a web coding language. It's an IDS add-on. Now, you could do a number of things. Like if an attacker launched so many attacks against your PHP server, it would simply block that attacker. Let me see if we have that. Let's go PHP IDS. So we have all of these different tools. This is the GitHub project of it. And you can see it hasn't been updated for a really long time, right? So, okay. But what I did see is some really cool stuff for PHP IDS in its day. One of the things I saw was Mr. Clippy. If somebody launched enough attacks against your web server, Mr. Clippy would pop out and it would say, hello, according to PHP IDS, it looks like you're trying to pwn my site. Would you like some help with that? Now, I want you to think about this from the perspective of an attacker, right? You're just doing your stuff in the morning. You wake up in the morning and you're just doing hacks, just normal hacker stuff. You got your coffee. You're just like, what's up, drinking it down. Maybe you have a bear claw. And you're launching an attack at a website, and all of a sudden the website pops up and it pops Mr. Clippy. And if you click on, would you like some help with that? It takes you to the OWASP page. So it's literally telling you you're a noob. Would you like more help getting better, noob? Now, I want you to think about what goes through the attacker's head, right? I want you to think about the attacker and their mindset. How do you think attackers are going to take this, right? Now, there are some people that say, well, that's going to make the attacker mad. They're going to get mad and they are going to hack harder. That's not true, at least in my opinion. It's not true at all. If you look at a lot of attackers, and let's hold for just nation state level adversaries for just a couple of seconds. A lot of people get into cybercrime because there's a low perception of risk. Okay. They don't consider it to be a risky behavior that they're going to get caught and they're going to go to prison. This gets into a very controversial view of law enforcement. Oh, wow. Controversial view of law enforcement called broken windows. The point is, if people go into some place and everybody's breaking the law and there's broken windows everywhere, they're apt to break laws because it's perceived that there's low risk to breaking laws in this area. Now, there's all kinds of crazy racial crap that happened in New York City, which I'm not going to get into. But by and large, the concept is correct. If people think they won't get caught, they tend to do bad things, right? Mr. Clippy pops out, and all of a sudden, you're looking at this from an OODA loop perspective. You now know as an attacker, your ability to observe is busted. You can't trust anything that's coming on this website. Most attackers aren't going to be like, time to hack harder. They're going to go away. They're going to go someplace else. They just are. Okay? Now, let's compare this to nation state level adversaries. As I mentioned, I have a background in doing that, right? I still have a clearance. I assist with advice. I don't actually do hands-on keyboards, nation state hacking anymore because that sucks. But the point is, whenever I was doing this, and I got into a situation where I believed that there was a high risk of me being caught, I would have to escalate up the chain of command to get approval to continue. And somebody higher than me would make that decision. They would ask me questions like, what is the likelihood of being caught? I'd be like, I'm guessing right now 60%. And then they would make a determination. They say, you know what, we're just trying to collect intel. We'll find another way in and go around this problem. Or they would do something like say, this mission is time critical, execute and move forward, knowing full well that we might get caught. So my point is the vast majority of times attackers don't want to get caught. And when Mr. Clippy pops up and tells them, yo, you're a noob, they're going to move on to someplace else, right? Another fun one. This is kind of a travel through time type thing. This actually started in a Boing Boing article a long time ago. I want to say, it says 2007 is probably whenever I got the screenshot of this one. I've been carrying it around for a long time, almost 20 years. But there was a Boing Boing article, and if you're wondering what Boing Boing is, it's kind of like Reddit before Reddit existed, if that's a good way of describing it or not. But it was basically a lot of tech people would share all kinds of like funny articles and tech things and things like that. Well, somebody popped up an article on Boing Boing way back in 2007 where they were like, look at this web server. There was this web server that is running Apache on a Commodore 64. And this person wrote this big, long article about how Commodore 64 could have been a contender. It could have been an operating system there with the greats if it would have just had a chance to grow and flourish. Well, that wasn't at all what was happening. What the attacker was doing is they were changing their Apache header information on somewhat regular intervals, where one day it would be an Oric Dragon, the other day it would be a CBM PAT, the other day it would be a ZX Spectrum 48K rubber keys. Ooh. Then it was a Commodore 64. Then you have a Cray and you have a Toshiba MSX, right? So what the defender was doing was changing their operating system profiles. Now this seems kind of funny because it is kind of funny, but this is actually very valid. Because when you look at vulnerability assessment scanners, if they're trying to determine if there is a vulnerability that exists in a service, they will check the service, check the banner, and check the operating system. And if it can properly catch the operating system, the service verification, then it'll make a lookup if there's any vulnerabilities for that server. So whenever a vulnerability assessment scanner looks at something like this and it scans it, it says, well, this is an this is an Apache server. It's running 2059. Okay, I've got that. What vulnerabilities do I have for that service on a Commodore 64? And it's like, I got nothing. And for me, looking at this, I thought this was really cool. And there's a bunch of tools out there that allows you to do this on more modern versions of Linux and specific versions like Debian. So you can still do this trick with Apache today. I just wanted to show you the first time that I ever saw it. Honey DNS. So you have on the outside of environments, you have a lot of IP address space that's not being used. Let me give you an example. Let's go to Shodan real quick. As I like to say, quick to the internet. So let's go to Shodan. Shodan, show enough. Here we go. All right. And I'm going to put in net colon, let's do 8.8.8/24. So who owns the 8.8.8/24 network range? Anyone know? It's all owned by Google. And in this /24, like 255, 254 possible systems, there is absolutely no other systems on that range. Google's DNS server is just lonely, sitting out there all by itself, doing nothing. Now, Google could use that IP address space to mess with attackers. So what you could do is you could take 8.8.8.1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, or not 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and just fill it with a bunch of non-existent fully qualified domain names. So if somebody does a reverse lookup, they would see like Farked, Bill, James, Kim, John, Mail, SMTP, FTP, Web, DNS, Paul.com, all of these different things. I'm willing to bet, Kyle, that they do own the whole range. I'm just guessing because it's Google, right? But you would take the IP address space that you have within that range, and then you would fill it with a bunch of fake hosts. And if you see an attacker that's actively trying to go after any of these hosts that, for the record, are not real, they're not real, like birds, right? Then you know that somebody is up to shenanigans. And you can start doing some things like deny listing in that situation. So very good. Did I ever read The Bastard Operator from Hell? Yes, I read the complete diaries of The Bastard Operator from Hell. I have. All right, so let's take this idea and let's talk about something that we can actually implement. And we'll do a quick lab with this. Just as an example, let's say I want to make a server, a web server in particular, evil, right? So this actually, as an idea started, it wasn't my idea at all. It was actually a busted web server down in Arizona, way down in Tacoma, in Philadelphia, Atlanta, LA, right? So this particular web server was really weird because I started testing it and it crashed and I was like, what the hell is going on? And the developer of that server was like, yeah, I looked at Apache and I looked at IIS and I noticed that they had lots of vulnerabilities. So I coded my own web server. I'm like, oh, you mean you coded your own website? He's like, no, I wrote my own complete web server from scratch. Which, by the way, don't ever do that. That's bad. It's going to hurt a lot. But there was one thing that he had on his web server that I thought was awesome, even though I couldn't keep the damn thing up for a vulnerability scan at all. So what happened is every time you went and clicked a link, it did a lookup table of the link to a randomly generated URL. So if you tried to crawl the website, you could literally go to the exact same URL multiple times and it would randomize every single time. And trying to crawl the website created a situation where it would crash my web crawler, which was really cool, which we now implemented in this class, right? So you can create a DOS condition against the attacker by using poison. Once again, let me say that again slowly. You can DOS an attacker with a poisonous cyber deception attack. You're not reaching out to them. You're not doing venom. You're not attacking them. It's like, oh God, what was the Turkish Delight? You guys remember in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, like the really annoying kid that was like, I would like more Turkish Delight. She kept giving him more Turkish Delight and he got more. It's like the sugary version of fentanyl, right? Like the kid's just like, just eating this Turkish Delight. You can do the same thing with an attacker, where you just give them random directories. So if they attempt to try to crawl the website, we can create a trap where they fall in and it just creates an infinite loop of despair for the attacker. All right, so let's go ahead and let's jump into back to the lab again, yo. All right, and we're gonna go down and we're gonna do the Spidertrap lab. All right. So we got usage information, some basic usage, and all of these different things. We have the instructions where we feed it a bunch of links, and then you're going to actually feed it into an actual directory listing from Dirbuster as well. So you're going to start with the first example. You're going to, CD into the Spidertrap directory. You're going to start Spidertrap. Then you're going to connect to it with your browser and you're going to see random directory links, right? Then you're going to try crawling it. And then we're going to replace Spidertrap with its basic variables, which is nothing. And we're going to feed it a directory listing called directory list big from Dirbuster. And I'll explain what that is on the other side, but it replaces random links with actual link values that are present there. All right. And that's the lab. All right, so I got a lot of stuff going on this VM at the moment. Let me drop that. And we'll start at the beginning because it's a very good place to start. All right. So we need to CD into the opt Spidertrap directory right here. So let me go ahead and open up yet another Kali terminal. And I'm going to make it bigger. Let's go change settings. You know what's weird? If I zoom, does it zoom for you guys at all? Let me know if you see it zoom, because I don't think it is.
Do it again.
It's zooming right now. Super big zoom.
No.
Wonder why, because you remember Zoom was working, right?
Yeah, Zoom was zooming.
Zoom was zooming. So now all of a sudden Zoom broke on Zoom, which is kind of funny. All right. So, alrighty. So let's go ahead and let's follow said directions. So we're going to CD into the opt Spidertrap directory. Then we're just going to run straight Spidertrap. No real weird settings at all. It's just going to execute it. Now, what Spidertrap does is it just basically spins up. It spins up and just runs an infinite loop of gibberish at a system. So let me grab my IP address real quick. And now we're going to surf to it. There we go. ETH0, 1010, 255, 153, like so. And we're going to open up a browser and we're going to surf to our system on port 8000. So go ahead and put that in. Just paste. There we go. All right. So like I said, this just serves up gibberish. That's all it does. It's just going to pop that. I do not want to turn on reaction zoom. There. And if I click on any of these links, it just spins up more gibberish. Okay. This is pretty much exactly what I saw in that one website that I was pen testing. Is it just kept crawling forever and ever and ever, over and over and over again. So we want to do something a little bit more interesting, right? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to kill this. And now we're going to rerun Spidertrap. But this time, we're going to run Spidertrap and we're going to feed it an actual directory listing of real directories from different websites. Now, this is from a tool called Dirbuster. And its whole purpose in life is literally to identify legit directories on various web servers. That's what it is. Now, to do that, it actually has a list of known, well-known directories that exist on web servers. Now, watch what happens when Spidertrap runs in this context. Now, instead of it being random gibberish, and I'm going to go ahead and ambignify this. There we go. You can see that it's actually giving us directories like EXI, shoes and boots, 12, or was it 11, 259, 96, light serve, bunch of randomly numbered directories, Barbus, plus size, USA, Canada, legal operations. These are all directories that they have found with Dirbuster over the years, and they just kept adding it into a larger and larger list. So what this does for an attacker is, well, let me just show you. So if I do this, just open up another Kali terminal. I'm going to go ahead and change the appearance, change the settings. We'll change the appearance. I'm going to change our font to be bold, less crisp, cool, and refreshing. There we go. Just like the Rocky Mountains where it came from. And I do wget, oh, geez, wget minus R, and I run it against was it, did I do it against 127.0.0.1 or did I run it in? Oh, this works just fine. I'll just do this one. So if I run wget against this local system, make sure it matches what you guys have. Oops. It just runs. Okay, now this is an important kind of inflection point and a little bit of understanding about how web application security assessments go. Most web application oh no, no. I just timed out my VM. Oh, I ran out of credits. Ran out of money. All right. Now I'm going to show you how you can buy new credits. All right. I'm going to buy 25 more credits. Go ahead. Get text message. Everybody close your eyes. There we go. Pay. Shows you how long I've been up this morning trying to get everything set up. All right, so we'll go ahead and let that start up again, but it's probably going to take longer for it to start up than I want to. But the point is, whenever you do that wget and it just continues to run, it eventually will fill up the entire hard drive of the system. Or some of the automated crawlers out there will automatically fill up the memory on the system because it loads all of the data that it identifies into an array in memory. So when you're doing this, once again, I told you this is like the Turkish delight, where it just continues to run and run and run, and the attacker keeps grabbing it. See, we aren't sending anything to an attacker, like at all. Like we're just literally just doing the, like, you want more? Here's more. You want more? Here's more. You want more? Here's more. And it just keeps coming again and again and again and again, over and over and over again. So somebody was asking about the link to the slides. I added them, I thought, in the resources. Yep, they're in the resources section. So if you go in to resources, you'll have the access to the slides. So it just keeps going forever and ever and ever. Now, I did have a lab that we used to have where we created a website that was a zip bomb, where you could have a request of a web server and in it you can gzip the file. So it's a very small file. It's literally, you can make it like a 2K, or no, it's more than 2K, probably like a 3 or 4K file. And as soon as the attacker pulls it down, it explodes and it's like 16 gigs. Now, the problem with doing the gzip lab, because anybody want to know like why I stopped doing a gzip lab or a zip of death lab? It was cool, BLT. Not going to argue. Not going to argue. It was really cool. It was awesome. Yeah, it actually crashed VMs. And whenever I was teaching this class at Black Hat, people would make a mistake and they would try to grab the gzip file from their host computer, and it would actually crash out their host computer system. And then we'd have to like mount the hard drive with the USB and then delete the file because it literally wouldn't start. They were that nasty. So I had to remove that lab. So once again, you can do this game with attackers where they come at you and you are able to just give them this infinitely recursive just junk, and their automated scan runs. And the other thing about the automated scan and the crawling, many attackers, whenever they're like footprinting or spidering a web server, they will kick off something like, not wget, but they'll start with burp or zap or something like that. And they will literally just let it run overnight when they go to bed. So they want to wake up in the morning and have this fresh website with all the stuff that they can attack and they can go after. So they don't want to sit there and watch their web crawler. And because they don't, things go sideways. All right. Now, another thing I wanted to show you now that my VM should be up and running. We'll go in. I put the instructions. If you go into resources, the last thing that I posted, if you all can jump into resources right now, you can see that I have wget, netcat, and then an awk command. This is what I was talking about, ASN ranking of different websites. So whenever you're looking at trying to identify where evil comes from on the open internet, you can see like what are the bad zip codes relatively quickly from this. So I'm going to do the last command. The other two commands take a little while to run. Well, the first one runs really fast. The second one takes a while for it to run. And what we're doing is we're pulling down a list of all of the different ASNs and we're ranking how many bad IP address hits we have in that ASN. So once again, that ASN is like a zip code of responsibility for IP addresses on the internet. So if you're looking at this right here, this one right here, BSNL-NIB, is National Internet Backbone, and it's from IN. And it has 39,598 bad IP address hits. Okay. The next one is China 169 background, China Unicom, China 169 backbone, China backbone. DigitalOcean is third with 5,612 blacklist entries. Alibaba, 5,201. Then you have Google Cloud Compute is up there, but you can see we got Microsoft. Now, Microsoft has a bunch of blocks. This isn't all of Microsoft. I think they have well over 20 different ASN blocks. But watch what happens very, very quickly, right? If you're looking at these ASNs, as they start going down, watch how fast they drop off. We go from 39,000 to 10,000 to 8 to 5 to 2 to 1. And in less than like 10 or probably 25 entries, we're down to less than 1,000. And you should also know that there's something like 65,000 ASN numbers on the internet. So now we're getting into ASNs that only have like 90 hits on them, right? Down to 60. And it's a very small percentage of ASNs that have any bad deny list IP address entries on them at all. The vast majority of them are at the top, right? So I shared with you all like the 3 commands that you can put into a script that'll do the exact same thing. That'll do like internet zip code or ASN ranking of how dangerous that particular ASN actually is. So what does this script actually do? So what it's doing, if we look at this first line, is it's simply downloading a master list of deny listed IP addresses. So, oops, that is not what we wanted. It's just pulling down a deny list. That's all it's doing to start. This is a GitHub repository, this particular individual. You can grab any deny list IP address out there. So this is just a list of bad IPs. So if we do less IP sum, like so, these are all of the IP addresses and the number of blacklist hits that the IP addresses have, okay? The next one that we run is taking those IP addresses and going into Kimry. I don't know why my copy and paste is not working. I think my VM is getting a little wonky now. There we go. Let me try to recopy this. Let's go back here. Just give me a sec. Now we're connecting into Kimry and we're trying to figure out which ASN or zip code each of those bad IP addresses are from right now here. And if you look at what's going on in the background, if you do right here, it's going to every one of the IP addresses and it is getting from Kimry which ASN that IP address is associated with. Okay. And then the final one is just doing a sort count on how many hits the ASNs had. All right. So that is the script that I just shared with you all. And that is in your, if I could think I could talk, that is in your resources section. So there you go. So you just run each of those one at a time. And the second one takes a while for it to actually do a lookup to every single one of those to pull down resources. If you're in Discord, Brendan, in the left, you can see John Strand, Active Defense, Cyber Deception. That's where you're at. And then if you look, you can see Resources, Active Defense. That's where the slides are, the instructions for the labs, and everything resides at. All right, there you go. All right, so now not getting shot is important, or not how to set this up, or how to set this up at work so you do not get shot, which once again, I don't want any of you to get shot. Why do we have this section? Well, I've been teaching this class for a long time in various iterations of it. I actually teach this class.
You're muted. Muted
You
yourself.
muted yourself
My mic again. I moved my mic. Oh, don't touch the mic. Don't touch the mic. So what I was talking about is I've taught this class in various incarnations and incantations over the years. And one of them I did for like Department of Defense. I do things for different law enforcement agencies. Well, one of the law enforcement agencies that I was working with, we take these deception ideas and we use them to try to identify malicious attackers in different groups. But we also use it in law enforcement to be able to hunt down people with fully executed and validated warrants, to use these techniques to find bad people. So I was teaching a variation of this class. We were doing all of these different things. Life was good. It was wonderful, awesome. Now, what happened was we went through the labs. Everything was great. And then 2 months later, the lead tech guy calls me up and he's like, hey, I just wanted to let you know, class was great. Really appreciate it. We're using some of the techniques that you guys had in the class, and we actually got this really, really bad, horrible drug dealer from South America. Really bad dude. Like one of those guys that like chops off people's heads and stuffs them in duffel bags and things like that. A really bad dude. I'm like, great. Where did you guys host your ADHD systems? And he goes, what do you mean? I'm like, well, the systems, like I gave you the VMs so you could host them in the cloud. And he goes, oh, we used your cloud systems, the ones that you gave us from class that were in Amazon. So for the labs in class, I set all of the students up with their own Amazon instances to do this stuff. And I forgot to shut them down after class. And then he started using them in ops against really bad people who like decapitating his enemies and stuffing their heads in duffel bags. And of course, he was like, oh, no, he was a really bad dude. He's going to be in prison down in South America for a long time. At that point, I want to say it's like 25 years is what he said, which is a long time, right? In certain prisons in South America. That was probably 15 years ago. So it's entirely possible that in 5 to 6 years, I disappear into the woods of Alaska. So I wanted to set up a counterpoint. Who is John Strand? All of a sudden, some male model is like, I don't understand why these drug dealers are coming after me. By the way, it's you got your ports wrong, Dark Nara. You did 8080. It's port 8000. Yep. Change that around from port 8080 to port 8000, and it should be better. All right. So I wanted to give you all kind of some quick overview of, now it's going to come across as overly paranoid. It absolutely should be completely paranoid. So you may not want to be this level of paranoid. That's fine, but I'm just kind of going as far as I can go with the paranoia on this, right? So the first thing is we want to make sure that we do investigations in such a way that you aren't making direct connections from your network. Right? If you have an IP address that's a little bit suspicious, that's doing something that it shouldn't be doing, a bit untoward, tawdry, maybe, don't directly connect to that IP address, because that attacker more than likely is going to be doing some type of traffic analysis to see if anybody tries to port scan them or run a vulnerability scan against them, which is something that a lot of organizations do. They're like, what's the C2 server? And like, well, fire up Nmap. I don't know. All the connections just went away. Or our network just melted down, right? So big direct connections, huge no-no. We recommend is that you don't connect until you're sure you have from an incident response perspective. And if you do connect, you want to set it up through like DigitalOcean or Amazon or someplace else, Linode, where you can start scanning that system where it's not directly associated with your network. And that's generally okay. And the reason why it's generally okay is because systems are getting scanned all the time. The thing that we don't want to have it look like is that you are actively scanning those systems directly. So I recommend that you set up a server. Now we're talking about this from the perspective as we move forward for callbacks. Anything you do that calls back, if we're going to create up a honey file, a honey service, if we're going to create honey badger, like executables for attribution, anything that comes back with information about the attacker. Like if we create, I'll give you an example. We have canary tokens. This is a fantastic service created by Thinkist Canary, where you can create these canary tokens like AWS keys. You can create, somebody tries to log in with Azure, or they try to access an Excel spreadsheet or a Word document. Like if you just choose Microsoft, like if it tries to run any of these, it's going to beacon back. So I can create an Excel token and download that token. And if somebody opens it, it fires, and then I get a beacon back. You don't want this beacon back to come directly to your network, right? You want it to go someplace else, all right? I wanted to go someplace else. And by the way, thank you for reminding me to destroy my VMs. They're just sitting here burning my credits. So I'm going to stop all my virtual machines. Thank you for the recommendation there. I think that that's outstanding. So we recommend setting it up on a third-party hosting provider. Like I said, Linode, DigitalOcean, whatever you can set up VDIs very quick. Don't set callback servers up on your own network, like ever. You want them to come from a server and domain not associated with your organization. I recommend a really kind of like interesting name, like, randomnumber.com or like randomnumber.com. There's tons of ad services out there that are firing all of the different things. Just ad services are everywhere and they all have really weird names. So if you come up with a really weird random name, it's not going to freak anybody out because they expect like weird internet connections with weird names, like literally all the time. It just happens constantly. So when you're running this, give it a weird name for a domain. And then if it beacons back, it's not associated with your domain. Also, if you register, try to set it up through anonymous registration so they can't say, well, this is by Black Hills Information Security. It's just not, you want to make sure that you have some level of separation associated with this as well. Also, set the server up via name and an email address that's not a real person, right? I have had organizations that we've done work with in the past where they're like, yeah, John, why don't you just set this up with your personal credit card? It's like, no, I'm not going to do that, right? I had some law enforcement agencies that I worked with where whenever I traveled, I would go to Walgreens and Walmarts in different parts of the country and buy hundreds of dollars of gift cards from those different Walmarts and different places. And then I would ship it to them and then they would pay me back because this payment would be non-attributable to anybody at that particular point as well. Proxy software. Now, don't ever set up your initial account for email. Like if you go to, let's say, Google Mail or you use Hotmail, God help you, or whatever it is you're using. If you're trying to use, I don't know, there's all kinds of different things out there. If you try to connect to it initially through Tor or through an anonymization proxy, it is going to immediately do bad things to you. Like if you try to set up some of these accounts going through Tor, a lot of times it'll just kick you out. Or if you try to set it up, they're like, oh, in order to set up this email account or this eBay account, you need to send us a copy of your driver's license, your passport, bank account information to try to validate that you are a real person. So what are you supposed to do? Like I recommend after it's set up, access it through Tor. Doesn't matter. But that initial setup is an absolute pain in the ass. Because if you use Tor, you use any type of anonymizing proxies that are out there, your services that you're trying to set up for this are going to freak out. So what do? This sounds stupid. Go to McDonald's. Go to Walmart and sit in like the food court or any place that, has it set up for you. Like, our Walmart has like a China or Panda Express or something like that, or an A&W, right? Or some Walmarts have McDonald's and you got 2 wireless networks to choose from. Believe it or not, these networks at Walmart, at McDonald's, at Hilton, like just go get a hotel room, connect to the Wi-Fi and go through there. Almost all of these different services, they pop all of their corporate traffic through a centralized like proxy and one pop going out. And they do this for a couple of reasons. They do this from a security perspective. Yeah, right. Or one of the things that they like to say is they do this because, no, they don't say this. They do it because they like to capture traffic statistics. They like to know where people are going. This gives them an idea of what places they should actually be advertising on as well. Call it a McProxy. Dude, I am going to steal that BLT. I'm going to talk about the McProxy solution. Just go to McDonald's and just set up your stuff through a McProxy. Then after it's set up and after you did that anonymizing network, then you can start connecting back to your services via SSH and things like that using Tor, using Tails or Wannix, or any VPN services at that particular point will work just fine. Non-attributable email, right? By the way, if you really want great McDonald's stuff, you got to look up Mac Sabbath. It's a Black Sabbath tribute band that they all dress up like McDonald's characters, Mac Sabbath. And then there's also the Ned Flanders, which is a death metal band. that they all dress like Ned Flanders. Just chef's kiss. Really good stuff. Check it out. All right. So generally, I recommend avoiding like Google and Microsoft because privacy isn't really their thing. And by the way, I want you to notice the paranoia level that I'm at like right now. This is getting crazy. And this is what I do with some of the things I do. If I'm doing something with law enforcement or intelligence community or DOD, this is like how nuts we get. So if we're setting up non-attributable email, we'll try to go through an email provider that is far less likely to respond to warrants or far less likely to route their traffic and send everything and offshoot it to China. So you got to watch out for these different things, but you're going to create an email account and everything is going to be tied back to that email account as the main registration point. The biggest point of failure for people when they set these things up is they don't set a good password. They just don't. You need to set up a really good password, right? Like a good, long, strong passphrase, 21 plus characters and possibly two-factor authentication associated with it as well. If you have to provide an address, I recommend doing the Blues Brothers maneuver. If you saw the first Blues Brothers, which is like the greatest musical ever created in the history of musical movies, hands down. By the way, the worst one is Blues Brothers 2000, which is really a steep drop off. Like Blues Brothers, amazing. Blues Brothers 2000, such garbage. I remember seeing it when I was in high school. I was very drunk, probably on some other substances at the time. And no matter how hard we tried, we could not find enjoyment in that movie. For reference, we totally went to Spice World, the Spice Girls movie, and enjoyed the snot out of that movie. So that movie's so bad, it's not even good when drunk. All right, but if you remember in Blues Brothers, the good one, they set their address up to be Wrigley Field. So when they were like, oh, we got to go find these guys, they all went to Wrigley Field. The police officers all showed up. You can do something similar. Just take a landmark that is something that you can easily remember, and then you make that your address that they actually give you, because they will ask you questions like, what is the address they provided or you provided? And you just remember, well, it's the Sears Tower in downtown Chicago, whatever that address is. Hosting and domain providers, a lot of the hosting providers can get a little bit crazy. Amazon can get really, really strict. Microsoft, if you're trying to set up something through Azure, equally strict. They want like your articles of incorporation and DUNS numbers and all kinds of different things. So we still use DigitalOcean. And by the way, we use DigitalOcean. We used to use Linode for a lot of this stuff. But we had maybe it was two. I can't remember, 2 or 3 times with Linode where we had set it up with them. They saw us doing illegal activity because we're a pen testing firm, and they shut down all of our ops. We really like DigitalOcean because as long as you have like proof, you're like, here, we have a contract. We're a pen testing company. DigitalOcean's like, go for it. Amazon is so crazy. We created a tool that was a crazy proxying tool. Amazon calls us up directly and they're like, we need to look at Fireprox and we need to talk to the developer and we need to talk to BHIS. And we got on a meeting with their security team and we talked it out. And at the end of that meeting, they're like, so wait, you're doing this all legitimately with contracts that are signed with customers through a legit Amazon account? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, all right, carry on. And then they became customers of ours. They were one of our biggest customers for a number of years. So they were just awesome to work with. But once again, Linode, not great, not great. So you have a bunch of options out there. So you can either upload or convert ADHD. ADHD is your VM that you're running in the cloud. Your Kali instance has all the tools. It's a version. We just call it ADHD. But I'd recommend actually installing the tools from scratch on that as well. Directly, I don't know. I mispronounce things. What was that? The words quote at the beginning from Violent Femmes? I say a lot of words. So here's what I'm going to do. If I misspeak, I want you to speak for 4 hours straight. And I want to see how many words you mispronounce. Okay? I'm willing. I'll do better. All right. So let's keep going. So you have this stuff. And the other thing I try to tell people is don't get emotionally attached to your cloud virtual machine. It can't be your This is my emotional support DigitalOcean note. Like you can't have that, right? Because you're going to have to take it out back and you're going to have to shoot it, right? You're going to have to just kill it. I've seen organizations that stand up these systems for doing attribution, and they use it for multiple different ops out there where they'll just basically go through and just run it for multiple ops. Don't do that because it will eventually get popped at some point. It will absolutely get popped. So use it what you need, kill it as soon as you're done. Also, looking for a provider that accepts PayPal or prepaid gift cards is important as well. Some of them are very stingy about that, but some of them just don't care. And it also depends on what the prepaid cards are. Like a lot of the Walmart American Express cards may not work, but others that are MasterCards do. So you've got to kind of like play with these a little bit. The cool thing about PayPal is you can preload from the credit cards into your PayPal account and transfer it over as well. Let's talk a little bit about burner phones, which I think is fun. So problem over the years, I've been teaching this class for a long time now. And like I mentioned, I have law enforcement people that come to my house. And for the longest time, when people would come to my house to take this class, I would give them like burner phones. I think I still have some. Hold on. The last time I taught, yeah. I don't even know what the hell that is. Oh, all right. So I get burner phones for my students. So these are Pixel 8As, unlocked, and they're ready to go. So, I've just got 2 left over. And they're still in the packages. No, just fell on the floor. All right. So we would give these to our students and then we would activate them and we would activate them with like different SIM cards that they would purchase and do things like that. And a lot of my students in law enforcement or government, they would leave the phones at the end of training. And they would do that for a number of reasons. One, they would have their own burner phones that they used for work on a regular basis. So that was one reason they would just leave them. The other reason is they'd be like, well, this might be a gift and we can't accept gifts. So they would leave them. So I have this box. Those are my new ones. I don't have it here, but it's down at the office in Sturgis. And we have this box of just burner phones. They're just phones that are there. Maybe they're activated with $10 of credits or whatever. And when my youngest son, who just graduated from high school, was going through middle school, he really wanted a cell phone. Like all of his friends had cell phones and he really wanted one. And we kept saying, no, 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 I can't give you a phone. You're too young. Well, he found my burner phone box and he got a burner phone out of the box and installed games on it and things like that and took it to school. And he got in trouble because at that point in the middle school, they didn't let you bring phones. And when the teacher took the phone, he was like, no, you can't take that phone, Mrs. Smith. That's one of my dad's burner phones and I'm going to get into trouble. So my son's teacher was like, burner what? And we had a parent teacher conference very quickly where the teacher was asking hard questions like, why do you have burner phones? So I had to explain that I teach law enforcement and I have burner phones that we teach law enforcement. And they still, I'm absolutely convinced that they still never believed me about that. But yeah, there's a number of different things. They're absolutely essential to confirm account details. You need to have a phone. 2-factor authentication, you have to have the phone. You can actually just get full phones. You can have at Walmart, Target, gas stations, little to no cost. And then you also have burner apps where you can have burner numbers associated with phones and you can feel like a real spy. You absolutely can. That's up to you, how crazy you want to go down the rabbit hole, right? Paying for it all, don't use personal credit cards. Just don't. Go to Walgreens, get a Visa, Amex, MasterCard, gift card, pay with cash. One of the cool things about COVID is it all of a sudden became okay to wear masks because a lot of places had cameras and they would scan your face, but now you can go in with a mask and a hoodie and no one blinks, right? If you did that before COVID, you might get the cops called on you. But now if you're wearing a mask, it's just, you may have an a-hole that's like, look, COVID's over, dumbass. You don't have to wear a mask. Screw those guys. By the way, I am completely for the Japanese mask process where if you're sick, you wear a mask to protect other people. I've done that on airplanes where I've flown and I've caught a cold and I'll wear a mask. And every time I wear a mask, there's some a-hole that's like, you don't have to wear masks anymore. You live in a free country. And it's like, dude, I've got a cold. I'm trying not to share it with absolutely everybody. In some countries, if you're on a train or if you're on an airplane and you cough or sneeze, people will give you a mask politely. They'll be like, oh, here, you don't have a mask. Here you go, put this on. And I just think that can't we be nice to each other? I mean, it just seems like a good thing. Don't jump in people's crap. But now you may have one a-hole that yells at you for wearing a mask, but other than that, people don't even blink. They don't even blink at all. So buy these cards, and really $100 to $500 is enough for a 2 to 6 month operation for what you might do. Now, once again, I said that this is for the callback server. So if you're doing anything with Canary tokens, Honey Badger, anything that's calling back, you can set up all of these different things, and anything that is a callback goes to your hosted service that is not attributed to your organization, different domain name, all of that stuff. So let's get into honeypots, but first, like, challenge lab of the day, which I'm super excited about. I love the lab that's coming up because it mixes all of my favorite things, Linux, IP tables, like all of this stuff together into one nice little challenge. And I think, hold on, this is not, I don't think I have this. I don't have a honeyport. Okay, cool. This lab is not in the GitHub. Okay, so the lab that's coming up is not in GitHub. You'll see a lab there called Honeyports. If you dig around my GitHub repository and be like, well, John screwed up, it's not linked. No, that is a completely different lab. It's a completely different thing. It's not linked for a reason. It's there for historical and archaeological purposes. It's not what we're doing here. This is a challenge lab. We can challenge it one of two different ways. Okay, so stick with me on this. We'll talk about it. So the idea of a honeypot is we want to create something that is intended to be interacted with by an attacker, not legitimate users. And we can literally honey all the things: honey tokens, honey record, honey table, honeypot, honeynet, honeycred, honeyport, honeydoc, all of it. Super easy to do. And the point is, if somebody interacts with it, you know that there's something bad is about to happen, right? Somebody's doing something they should not be doing. And the rest of this class is going to be a whole bunch of different honey services and different ways of setting up honeypots that we're going to be going through. Now, the purpose for this is you can do honeypots in two different ways, right? You can do research honeypots or you can do production honeypots. Yesterday, somebody asked me about what's a good PhD paper. And I still don't know what the answer to that is. I'll give you one. For a PhD, this is tough, right? But PhD papers are supposed to be tough. Is AI and computer security actually executing on the promise that it said it would deliver? In short, find a bunch of organizations, create a bunch of survey questions. Have they implemented AI? Have they reduced staff? Has AI helped reduce that staff? Has there been any negative consequences in doing that? There's a good PhD paper. A bad PhD paper is put a Windows Server 2002 on the internet as a honeypot to see if it'll get hacked. The answer is yes, it will get hacked. A lot of academics love honeypots. They love overly complicated honeypots. And the data that they get is just like Velo. Water is wet, sky blue, polar bears not to be snuggled with, right? We can't do things like that. So I'm not a big fan of research honeypots. I'm a really big fan of production honeypots, where you have decoy diversity, decoy network, decoy persona, decoy processes, decoy systems from MITRE that we can set up and we can identify potentially malicious attacks. And many of the organizations that are out there, they may use honeypots to learn about how attacks work. And it can be a very useful learning tool, like a hacker ant farm. It's great at great at home for fun. Sit around, play Xbox on Thanksgiving, or you could just set up a honeypot. Be like, come kids, come quick. They're about to compromise another server, right? It can be a huge time sinker where you just waste a ton of time. It's like, I don't know, what are the games kids are playing today? Are they still playing Clash of Clans? I don't know. Some of my employees in my coffee shop play Clash of Clans. Great. All right. Management doesn't often see the value associated with, oh, Roblox. Yes, 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 yes. I forgot about that. And of course, Minecraft. Yeah, that's just still huge, right? So it can be a huge time sink, and a lot of times management doesn't see the value, and I understand that. Why don't we focus on real attacks? So you can use honeypots to learn about attackers to answer some questions. Are you there just to detect and clear? Chicken jockey. Or are you trying to detect and learn? What did the attacker have access to? Are they just dropping cracked software, pornography? Are they using the system for a DDoS against a remote computer system? What are they looking for? What else did they have access to? We can totally use it to answer these questions. And once again, this goes back to our formula. Detection time plus reaction time must be less than the amount of time it takes to successfully break into a network. So if we can have the attacker bogged down on a honeypot, on a honeyport, on a honey service, that gives us detection opportunities for alerting. But it also wastes the attacker's time, because every moment they spend kind of crawling around looking inside of these honeypots is one less moment that they're crawling around and attacking your network. And this can be used to look for post-exploitation activities. It can be used to detect any 0 days that possibly are hitting networks. We can look for lateral movement and so on. So one of the first ones that we're going to do is we're going to do a lab with honey users. I like to do it at this point. I mentioned it later on in the class. I've got to update the slides a little bit, but honey users are incredibly powerful. The idea behind a honey user account is it's a user account that exists that no one's ever going to touch unless they're a hacker. And I'm going to tell you, this crap works, y'all. Because if you're looking at like a heat map of post-exploitation techniques, one of the most common post-exploitation techniques that attackers love to do is an internal password spray. That is where they find or they get access to one account. Then once they have access to that account, they then use that account to laterally move and spray and attempt to gain access to a number of other user accounts in the environment. All right. So that is an internal password spray, and we can detect that by using a honey user account. And that's what we're going to do. Now, we're going to talk about doing this internally for a post-exploitation detect, but you can also do it on the outside of your environment if somebody's trying to log in to your external Office 365. You can put it on the outside of your environment for SSH, and I'll talk more about that here in just a little bit. So let's go ahead and let's jump over to our virtual machine, and we're going to go to honey user. So honey user, you're going to open up a command prompt, then you're going to navigate to the C tools directory. I see that we have a typo there. Let's go ahead and let's edit that real quick. It's not even that. It's intro labs. There we go. Commit changes. There we go. And it's done. All right. So you're going to go into the intro labs directory, and then you're going to run this little script that is 200 user gen bat. This is going to make your system look a little bit more realistic. It's going to generate 200 users, right? And it should look something like that. Then we're going to go into event viewer, and we're going to create an event like filter that specifically focuses on Frank. Why Frank? Because. So we're going to create this rule with the XML, and it should look like this when it's done. And then you're going to put in the filter, and you're going to see Frank. Now, the reason why we have these, not necessarily alerts, but these events, these 4 different events, is it also works historically. So it's a filter. So when we created the Frank account, it generated 4 separate events for the creation on it as well. Now, you're going to open up a command prompt. You're going to cd into intro labs. You're going to invoke PowerShell. Then you're going to set the execution policy to unrestricted. You're going to import the local password spray module. And then you're going to run local password spray with the password of winter 2020. And it should look like this when it runs. Now you're going to close out. That's fine. And then you're going to go back to your event viewer. You're going to refresh, and you're going to see that we have a few more alerts with Frank because someone attempted to log in as Frank. Not successfully, but they attempted. And that is the lab. So let's go ahead. We're going to be talking about honey user accounts, right? We're looking at Honey user accounts as a way of creating this tripwire because accounts are one of the most like heavily used pathways for getting into an environment or doing a lateral movement post exploitation. And we really want to make sure that we have the ability to detect that. So let's go ahead and let's get set up here in just a second. So the first thing that we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating a bunch of user accounts. And as part of creating a bunch of those user accounts, one of those said user accounts is the Frank account. Why Frank? Because Frank. I don't know. I kind of like that name, I guess, is where we're at. All right. And I should be able to connect via RDP. And we're going to open up a command prompt and we're going to CD into the intro labs. And then we're going to run the 200 user gen.bat script. So it takes up a couple seconds for a VM to come up in guacamole. And then we're going to do 200 user gen bat. It's going to create those 200 users. Once again, we want it to look and kind of feel like it would if an attacker had broken into one of your environments and was basically trying to do an internal password spray. So we're going to create 200 users to make it look that way. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to open up Event Viewer and we're going to create the filter. So I'm going to go down here. I'm going to type Event Viewer, open that up, wait for it. Takes a few moments. There's a lot going on here. There we go. And then we're going to go to Windows Logs. We're going to go to Security and Create Custom View. Now, once we get into Create Custom View, once it's opened, takes a few seconds to load all of the event logs. We have to create this XML file that is the filter that'll then become the custom view. We're going to create that custom view that literally pulls anytime anyone tries to connect at all to Frank. Not successfully logging in as Frank, just trying to authenticate, do anything with the Frank account at all. We're going to edit said query. There we go. I'm going to delete that existing query. Oops, the wrong way. There we go. And then we're going to copy and paste the XML I created. I haven't memorized how to type that crap from scratch. I just haven't. All right. I'm going to paste it in. There we go. Click okey dokey. And I'm going to call it Frank because it has to do with Frank. We're going to click OK, jumps us up to that custom view, and you're going to see 4 events associated with Frank that came from the creation of said Frank account. Now we have the trap. We have the account that's been created. It's got a password associated with it. It's just sitting there waiting. Now we're going to use a hacker tool to actually trigger it. So to do that, we're going to open up PowerShell. We're going to CD into Intro Labs like so. And then we are going to import, we got to set the execution policy unrestricted first, right? Go and do that. There we go. Go to all scripts, live life mass. All right. Then we're going to import the module that loads the functionality up from the attacker tool. By the way, this particular tool is a minor modification of a tool called Domain Password Spray, which is a separate tool that was created by Bo Bullock of Black Hills Information Security that we use all the time. Now we're going to invoke local password spray, but we're going into the past of winter 2020. And we're going to basically authenticate to 6 different accounts with that password. Now notice, none of those accounts, not a single one of those accounts was Frank. We didn't log in as Frank at all. It's just, we logged into Christopher, Dennis, Gregory, Jack, Jerry, and Michael. That's it. But we attempted to log into Frank. And simply trying to attempt to authenticate to the Frank account generated 2 more event authentication failures, where the administrator account was trying to authenticate to the Frank account right there. We can see that its status was failed for Frank. Now, what's the point? I mean, why did we do this? Well, my point is, if we can set up a Honey user account in like 15 minutes in a class using the built-in Windows Event Viewer, you should be able to get a Honey user account set up in your super expensive, super slick city boy style sim that you're running. It's not hard. That's my point of that lab. Not difficult at all for you to set this up. So if you're running ArcSight, you're running Splunk, you're running Elastic, you basically just go through, create an account, Log into the account. That's actually really important. You log into the account itself. Otherwise, the last authenticated date will be January 1st, 1601, which is kind of weird. Has to do with the Gregorian calendar. If you guys want me to talk about it, I can. But it has to do with like last login time. You want to update that. So it's obvious that this account was a real account, that somebody is logging into it. So that's what we want to do. And it doesn't take long to do it. And you will catch hackers, right? If you have any pen testers that are doing an assumed compromised assessment in your environment, I can guarantee you that they are going to try to gain access to your post-exploitation, gain access to other accounts via an internal password spray. And this will catch them every single time. And when we're working in our security operations center at Black Hills Information Security for our customers, a couple of quick things about this. The first thing that's kind of cool is this particular technique works when everything else fails. We have customers that have environments that haven't installed our Lima Charlie agent. We have customers that have entire network segments that are like, let's say, like a wireless segment for people that are guests coming into the environment, right? They don't have any telemetry, but it's connected to the corporate environment, which it shouldn't, but it's still connected to the corporate environment. And an attack originates from there. We'll detect it because it has the password spray detect in that Honey account. Now, the only time that this doesn't work for our customers is when our customers accidentally shut down the account. They have auditors that go through, they look at all the accounts, like, when's the last time someone logged into this Frank account? That's weird, strange. Delete it. And then it stops working. And then something happens and then they blame us. Like, why didn't your honeypot work? It's because you guys shut it off, right? So this works incredibly well, all right? It is fantastic. You should be using it. It is quick, it is easy, and it is going to work. Now, if we start getting into services, there's a bunch of different tools out there like the Open Canary project where you can create a number of different services like FTP, HTTP, SMB, SSH, Telnet, and so on. And they have templates that are created for every one of these services that you can do. In fact, if we jump back over here and I go into my Kali instance, right? We go ahead and make this appearance a little bit bigger. Appearance and change it right here. If I go into opt, but I don't want Spidertrap, I want a beelzebub. And I CD in configurations. This particular honeypot doesn't just do SSH. It also does 80 web server, 8080 SSH on 2222, and also RDP. So this using AI gives you the capability of leveraging AI to emulate multiple different services, not just like SSH. So that's kind of neat as well. But there's a bunch of servers and services that allow us to do this, and Canary does it very well. Now, you can also do some other commercial solutions. Maze Runner that got acquired, one of my friends, Gotti Averon, was running Symmetria and it got acquired. I can't remember by who, but they had this idea of breadcrumbs where you could put in files, different things that would reference different Honey services, and it would create a funnel basically leading the attackers and continuing to waste their time. The best way I like to describe it, and Gotti never liked this, is you're like creating like this scavenger hunt that the attacker goes on, but the scavenger hunt is all honeypot the whole time and wastes their time. That's one way to do it. So let's talk about honeyports. Now, this is a bit different, right? We aren't emulating a whole service yet. We're going to get there, right? We're doing foreshadowing. We're going to get there specifically. Tomorrow, we're going to be playing with honeyports and things like that, which I think is pretty cool. However, we're just going to start with the very basics and we're going to build up. We're going to start with ports that can trigger. As soon as somebody makes a full established connection to a port, that port triggers and does something. And in this lab that we're going to do, it's going to automatically create a deny list entry via IP tables. It'll shut that down for you as well. So as somebody tries to connect to it, it's going to create a blacklist. It's going to generate an alert. It's going to fire up Mr. Coffee. If they are not done correctly, you might DOS yourself. And I'm going to explain how to avoid that self-DOSing situation. But there's a number of cool things you can do when you understand how connections work before you start implementing them. Now, there are some other services you can put in. If somebody does multiple failed login attempts against a server, it can trigger something like fail to ban. So regardless of what the service is, as long as it's logging, fail to ban will watch the authentication logs and it'll look at these for like web servers, telnet, SSH. And after a certain threshold is tripped, it'll then denial list that attacker from connecting for, let's say, a period of time that is variable, like 5 minutes, 10 minutes to an hour as well. It is super easy to set up. It's like apt-get install, fail to ban, and it's running. And if somebody does an SSH attack, they get nothing. They get nothing at all. All right. So let's talk about honeyports. So we're going to start at the beginning and we're going to do this in Bash. Okay. So you're going to create 2 different scripts that automatically drop connections to your honeyports. One is for Linux and then the optional one is for Windows. You can totally do that one if you want. If you hate yourself, you can do that. It's there for you. There's one little trick to it that everybody gets wrong, but I explained to it, but you can treat that as a challenge for the Windows people, right? I'm going to give you a couple of write-ups on the different components. Now, for those of you that are not comfortable with Bash and Linux, that's okay. I have the answer and you could just type the answer in and you can just run it that way if you want. That's perfectly fine if you want to do it. But we have a series of write-ups on the different components that you can use as one way to solve this particular challenge. And this challenge for the person keeping the time is going to be 45 minutes, including the break. So we're going to start this up in about, I would say, 7 minutes, and then we'll need 45 minutes on the timer because with break and everything, it's going to be 45 minutes. There we go. So the first thing that you're going to use is IP tables. IP tables is a wonderful Linux firewall that almost all commercial firewalls are built upon. If you look at a commercial firewall that has an amazing GUI under the hood, it's more than likely just Linux IP tables. It just is. Now you can run amazing GUIs with it, and that's neat. But you can also run it directly from the command line, which is far cooler, I think, right? So you can do that. And an example rule would be something like IP tables minus A means we're going to add a rule to a chain. There's multiple chains like input, output, forward rules. There's also mangle and some other NAT rules that you can do. But the main ones that we're going to be using here are going to be the input chain. You can say protocol is TCP, the source IP address, and then jump it to drop. That'll effectively block any and all traffic that is coming from that IP address coming into this particular computer system. If you have to clear your rules, you can do IP tables minus capital F. If you want to list your rules, you can do IP tables minus capital L. Now, we're using Bash scripting for this little lab. We're using Bash scripting because it works and it works pretty well. It is very powerful. It is everywhere. And it's really kind of the first coding language for a number of people. And there's nothing wrong with just getting good at Bash scripting. It's Turing complete, means you can do anything that you can do in C or Python, you can do in Bash. Maybe a little bit painful, but you can do a lot of really cool stuff. It is incredibly powerful for general systems administration, for things like managing the firewall on a Linux computer system. So to do a loop, something that just keeps repeating, is you can do while space bracket, space 1, space close bracket, semicolon, do something, semicolon, done. This will cause it to loop around and around and around again. It's also like, and there's more than one way. You can do while squiggly bracket, like true squiggly bracket. You can do while colon semicolon. There's a number of ways to do a loop in Bash. This is just one of those ways to do this. It depends. If PowerShell or Bash, I would recommend using Bash first. I think Bash has a lower learning curve than PowerShell does, to be honest with you. But that's like my opinion, man. You totally could have something else that you think is better as well. If you want to assign a variable, you basically do like foo equals bar. And then if somebody does echo foo, it's going to print bar, but you have to put a $sign in front of foo. The first one is creating a variable and assigning the value bar to that bucket. You're just putting it in there. And then when you call the bucket, it prints out the contents, which is bar. You can play around with uname to look at, different cut for delimiters, specifying space as a delimiter. You can play with that number and get kind of understanding that as well. Netcat is a very powerful tool. Like basically, it allows you to shove data over network connections, which is pretty cool, honestly. But in this situation, we're using it to log connections to a port. So it's listening on a port and it's logging who's making that connection. So when you do verbose connection or on a listener on Netcat, it'll say the source IP address has connected. Cool. We want to capture that IP address as a variable. And you can make it listen on any port of your choosing. Now, grep, we can look for specific strings like connection from. It's just going to log when somebody makes a connection, right? We have examples of, you can pipe data from one command through grep to find a string as well. And then we also have standard output shell redirect. So we have standard input is 0, output is 1, and 2 is error. Once again, if all this stuff makes no sense to you, do not panic. It is okay. There's not an issue with this. We have the full thing. You just basically type it and try to get it to work. But I want you to understand what the different components are when you type it. So you need to chain some of these things together. The output of a command may need to go to another command, which filters it out, and that gets assigned to a variable. Break your different commands up into different pieces. What do you need? Pull this stuff together. And there's the solution, or a solution. For those of you that are horribly confused, just try typing this into a script and executing it, okay? Don't get too worked up because I'm going to walk through it step by step by step, okay? So that is the lab. You're going to do it inside of your VM. You run it as root because, well, you should run it as root because you're messing with IP tables. So once again, if this is horribly confusing, the solution is on page 92 of your books. All right, so I have 3 windows. I'm gonna have a connection window down here, and I'm gonna have the script popped up here where I have the entire script set up. And then on the left, we're gonna take it apart piece by piece by piece. I don't know, there's times, no, come here. Come here. There you go. Just hang out with me right there. No, there you go. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this entire script apart piece by piece by piece. And some people were asking about like a scripting language class and how to do that. I've thought about writing one. It's kind of hard, but like coding and scripting and stuff is just not where my heart is. It's very much in like hacking and security. But I'm going to go through and I am going to walk through it step by step by step, taking it apart, and I will paste the whole thing in for people here as well. So let me do that first. Let's do less honeyport.sh. So I'm just going to copy this whole thing and I am going to throw it into Discord here. There you go. So there's my script, and I'm just going to queue out of it. And we're going to take it apart piece by piece by piece. All right. So the first one where we have the shebang, the bash, like the pound prompt, and then the exclamation point, that's saying what is the coding language. Anytime you're working with scripting, you may be doing bin bash, bin sh, bin python. It kind of identifies what language the script is in. So the person that's working the script and executing it will have an idea of what it is. Echo started is just that. Like if I take echo started as a straight line and I just copied echo started over, right? If I take that and I paste it over, it just prints started. That's literally the only thing that it does, right? That's oh man, copy and paste inside of a VM is weird. Then we get to the while. Now this is a loop and the spaces matter. If you're looking at it, you have, wait, I thought I just passed it in. Okay, other people have them in there as well. All right, so I have things showing up over here in Discord and catching my attention. All right, so echo started, just echo started, and then we do a loop. And as I mentioned, there's a number of ways that you can do a loop. We just did a while, space, open bracket, space, 1 space, close bracket on that. So that's just the way of doing a loop. Now, whenever we say do, we're saying for each step of the loop. Every time it does, I want it to loop it again and again and again. So as it's looping, each loop, it's going to do the same thing, which is this netcat command that we have going here. Now, what we're going to do with this, though, is I'm going to show you how I look at scripting as a whole, and how I approach it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go netcat listen on port 2222. All right, we'll just do that. Oops, I already got it in use. Let's do 1025, like the lab says. All right, so I've got a netcat listener, and the only thing it's doing is just listening on said port. I'm going to connect to it. .0.0.1 on port 1025, like so. And notice up above that like nothing really happened, right? If I disconnect and just kill it, right? If I go Control C, kill our connection, you can see our data is coming through. I can send data through, but it's not really logging anything on that side. I really want to get that IP address of who's making the connection. So I've got to kind of change my netcat command a little bit. And I'm going to put in don't resolve any names, and I'm going to put in verbose. So now it's being very verbose. And out of the gate, the first thing it did is it just printed out a line that said listening on. That doesn't help me. It really, really doesn't. It's just a line of data, and it's verbose data. It's saying it's listening on any connection coming in, and it's listening on port 1025. That's cool, but it's not what I need for the purposes of my script. So now I'm going to connect to it again, right? And now I get this line. Check this out. This line says connection from 127.0.0.1 source port received. Okay. So I have two different lines. I have one that says listening on, and then I have another one that says connection from, and it says it received that connection. So what I want to do is I want to kind of start building my script up a little bit by little bit. And we're going to pipe that through grep. And just like over here on the other side, I want to grab any of the connections that have received, right? Now, watch what happens here. I'm going to run this. I still get that listening on. And when I make the connection, it still says received. What the hell's going on? Well, it turns out that the way netcat works, whenever it prints a message to you, it doesn't print it to standard output. It doesn't. It prints it to standard error. All right. Now, I talked about 0, 1, and 2. 0 is input, 1 is output, and 2 is error. Whenever I'm piping data, it's expecting to take that standard output and pipe it, not standard error. So I have some other things here, right? Where I have this standard error is then dumped into duplicated standard output. So we're taking error, the messages from netcat. They're not always errors. It's just messages from the tool, okay? And I want to redirect that through standard output because my grep statement is waiting and listening on standard output. And then I clean up after myself by kicking that data into dev null, right? So now look how this is different whenever I do just this part, okay? So we're going to take that string right here. And then I'm going to kill this, pull it up, paste it in. I'll just type the whole thing. I got history here. All right, so we're going to go netcat, listen on port 1025. Don't need that. I just need to do V and N because I want to be verbose. I want to listen. I don't want to resolve any names. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take that standard error, which is a 2. We're going to dump it into duplicated standard output. Like if you look over here, we have that ampersand. So we're going to put in that ampersand 1. All right, so that's going to send it into standard output. And then we're just going to kind of clean up after we're done, after we get it. We're going to send that into dev null. There we go. And then we pipe the rest of it through grep received right there. So see that? I got to get my spacing right. There we go. So now we're still grepping out that string, but the way it works now, I don't print that first line that says listening on 0.0.0.0. It's now gone. The only thing it's going to print is whenever it receives a connection on that port. Bam, got the line. All right. So I don't have any of the other lines out there. I just don't. I do have a double space. It doesn't make a difference in this particular space, in that specific place. It doesn't matter. Other spaces do matter. But I'm now only grabbing the line that has received. And the reason why I want that line is because it has the IP address that I'm going to dump into a variable called IP address. So you can see right here, it says IP equals. The mess of this data is going to just get assigned to a variable called IP. Now, I don't know why in the hell I did it this way. You can do this line with cut, which is probably an easier way of trying to do it. I just did it with awk, where we're going through and we're printing the third value and we're specifying space as a delimiter with awk. And awk, a lot of people say it stands for awkward, which it doesn't. It stands for the initials of the people that created the tool. So now let's see what happens if we only grab the third delimiter using our awk command. So quit. Just Q. Force. There we go. There we go. So now let's grab this messy string right here. Grab that messy string right there. Paste that over here. All right. Now we got it. And now we're going to connect. Now watch what happens. Nothing initially, but as soon as I kill my connection, it only prints the IP address. And the reason why is we have that standard error, which is special messages from Netcat, and it sends it into output. So now we can capture it with that pipe and that grep statement. And then we're grepping out the line with received, any of the lines that have received. So when it says listening on 0, don't care about that line, doesn't have the word received. It's only going to print that. And then it takes that output and it pipes it through awk. That's like Wahi, Weinberger, and K, whoever the K name is. And this is just a way to specify a space as the delimiter that we're looking into, and we're printing the third value. And the third value is the IP address. So now if we start taking this apart piece by piece by piece, if I do grep received and I make the connection, I get just that line. If I do grep received with the awk, I get just the IP address. And that whole line, when it executes, we got the backticks that we're wrapping it in. That means that only the IP address will be dumped into a variable called IP, okay? And then the next value that we're putting in is IP tables. We're putting in a rule for input, and the protocol is TCP. And then the source is going to be the variable IP address. It's going to jump it to drop. All right. So we've got our commands here. All right. We've got our little script. It's ready to go. Now we run it. Let me just run it over here. We run honeyport.sh. It says it started. Now for the important part. You cannot spoof this with another IP address and cause it to block that IP address. You just can't. And let me show you why. If I do, let me become root here. And I go nmap. I do a syn scan, which is the default, but I'm going to put it in as a syn scan. And I put in 127.0.0.1. And I'm going to put in the port 1025. Put that in there. Right there. It's going to run, and it says that port is open. Notice my honeypot didn't fire. So if I keep running that, my honeypot doesn't fire, honeypot doesn't fire, honeypot doesn't fire. And I can put in decoys. And it decoys work, but the honeypot doesn't fire at all. And the reason why it doesn't fire is because it's just a SYN connection. So if you want this to fire, it requires a full established connection for it to fire. It will not fire with spoofing. It will not fire with SYN packets coming in. It requires a full established connection for it to trigger. So if I change this and I do T, which is a full connect scan, notice that things change. The first thing that Nmap's going to give me is an error. It's going to be like, you're an idiot. You have options that are stupid. The next thing it's going to do is it's going to trigger the honeyport. So watch what happens. So I hit enter on this and it says, look, you specified some options that require raw socket access. These will not be honored for a connect scan. And it still scanned it and it blocked the IP address, but it ignored the decoys. It didn't send any packets with the decoys. And the reason is you cannot spoof a full established connection in TCP/IP. I mean, you can, but it's highly unlikely. You have to brute force and guess a random value out of 4.72 billion possible values, and you have to do it in less than a second. And if this was a major security issue, if it was a major security issue for something like this, then it would be a major security issue for literally every TCP/IP connection on the face of the planet. So this creates a honeyport that only fires in the event of a full established connection. So the relative risk to you is relatively low, right? Now you can also add in logging to this with, instead of jump to drop, put a rule right above it that says jump to log, and it'll log it to var log messages. You can even add log prefix where you can say honeyport connection as well. So that's pretty cool. All right, so that's kind of the main section of class today. I wanted to leave some time for Ask Me Anything. I know that this is kind of a head scratcher, but I kind of like getting into day 2 and doing some like really cool technical stuff that I think is kind of fun. Get some people associated with scripting and things like that. What do you mean the relative risk is low? The risk, so a lot of people are worried about setting up a trigger for honeyports, that they're worried about an attacker will spoof legitimate services and DOS their network. And that risk is like non-existent. That risk is no greater than any TCP/IP connection. So your risk to you running this tool or running this type of honeyport script is really, really incredibly low. It's no different than it is for any other connection. So this is something that you can set up on your systems relatively easily. One of my friends, I can talk about it now, they were never under contract. One of my friends worked with Apple a number of years ago, and they set these honeyports all over the outside of Apple, and it basically blocked any of the script kiddies or any of the different scanning services and any people that were just passively scanning. And it saved Apple $100,000 a month in storage costs of logs alone, because they were logging all of these different attacks and all of these different things all the way across the board. And as soon as they set it up so it just basically kills any of this, anybody that's trying to do the scanning by hitting these ports, it reduced that much noise. So you get into the signal to noise ratio. TCP cookie guessing is no longer possible in updated modern TCP/IP stack. If you write your own IP stack reference history, you might create the problem. Two completely different things. If you're looking at this, we're looking at the sequence number guessing. That is different than TCP cookies. TCP SYN cookies is a technique that was created to defend against DDoS attacks, where people could do a SYN flood against a system and fill up the TCP/IP stack. What a TCP SYN cookie does is whenever you receive a connection, it moves that TCP connection off of the TCP/IP stack into the higher memory of the operating system, where it's much more difficult to exhaust all the possible values and use up all the memory associated with the TCP/IP connection stack on your operating system. So TCP SYN cookies are DDoS protection. We're specifically talking here about sequence number prediction, which is a value between 1 and 4.72 billion possible values. Now, the other reason why the sequence number guessing was possible with Kevin Mitnick versus Hitomo Shimomura is the sequence numbers were not that strong. And also, Satomu Shimomura was using a service that just received any raw connection and data via a TCP port. So as long as it came from a specific IP address as well. Okay. How do you convince management to invest in security before something happens? Honestly, I recommend brown bags. I know that seems like a stupid solution. Just set up brown bags and start doing brown bags on personal home protection, protecting your browser, protecting your kid, setting up open DNS to protect your home, how you set up antivirus and things like that. Because most of the time, whenever they're fighting you for security funds, it has nothing to do with security funds. It has everything to do with you or the security team, rather. And the reason why is they just don't trust you. So you need to start developing that trust. And that trust is not something that's demanded. Oh, by the way, just a FYI, no one's ever going to respect you if you demand respect. You have to earn it always in every situation that's out there. Off topic, but on topic. I'm trying to convince my company to buy us access to either the vault or on demand. I think I'm having them willing to pay for one class to start. What do you recommend? I would recommend looking at like Michael Allen's class if you're interested in red teaming. If you're interested in getting started with pen testing, my intro to pen testing class would be good to just getting you up and running and starting a pen testing practice. There's a number of them available to you. So also one of the things that's coming up, and this is really hit and miss, is you can buy it all in one shot, but we are going to have a monthly subscription for like $125 a month for the entire class catalog. So that is coming up probably here in the next couple of weeks. We will have something where you can buy it, but it's a recurring catalog subscription where we charge monthly. And the reason for that is because you have a lot of people that they just can't afford $1,500. They may be able to afford $150 or sorry, $125 a month. So they're coming on that. What are my Linux package managers? We only needed APT. We didn't need Snap. We didn't need Flatpak. We didn't need all these things. APT and RPMs were fine. It just pisses me off that we're spending so much time and effort in the Linux community coming up with new ways to do packages when we could just stick with the stuff that works. All right. But yes, we will be coming up with a monthly subscription. We've had a lot of people asking for it. I always feel uncomfortable with it because in my take, a monthly subscription is something I subscribe and then I just forget about it. And then I'm like, holy crap, I'm paying for that product. There's things in like the App Store, right, that are like $30 a month. There's some games there that are totally designed to be traps. But I do understand that there's a lot of people that just can't bite off $1,500 in one shot. And it's just easier for them to do $125 on that as well. Yes, the GitHub pages will be available for future studies as well. Yeah, we're trying to make it more accessible for more people. Yep, absolutely. What other questions do you have? And I'm hoping to have that new lab buttoned up and ready to go tomorrow. So sit tight. It should be fun. Yep. I don't think that we're going to do refunds, but if you want to pause it, you can totally pause it. I don't know how, really don't know how WooCommerce handles that, but we'll do that as well.
Are we doing it through WooCommerce or are we going to be doing it through PayPal?
No, it's going to be WooCommerce. All of our stuff's moving to WooCommerce here shortly.
Good to know.
Yep. Yeah, right now our big problem is it takes 7 clicks to buy anything on our website, which is a bit crazy.
Did you see that? Do you prefer IP tables over UFW?
Oh, I much prefer IP tables. It's just whatever. It's kind of how I came up, and that's just what I do, right? It's like I'm old. All right. What else? Yeah, IP tables are sorry. IP tables is old. I like how Ricardo threw that out there. IP chains, old, dude. That's old. Like it used to be called IP chains, and then they switched over to IP tables. So it's kind of crazy on that. Can we get some more sizes? I'm going to tell you guys, come to class on the last day. We have something special for you all. We have some special stuff for you for the last day if you're talking about the store. All right. Alrighty. Well, if there's no more questions, let's get out of here. So with that, get rolling. I'll see you guys tomorrow, same time, same channel. Yeah, I think we are starting on ports if I have too many things open here. But I think we are starting on, I think we're going to finish up ports, and we're going to do port spoof tomorrow. So we'll be getting into that as well. All right, everybody, get out of here. Thank you so much, and I'll see you later.
I think with that, Daryl, you can go ahead and kill it with fire. Have a good day, everyone.